Nothing hurts like a perfect exposure that still makes your photos look bad. You meter, you adjust, you fix, and it's still off. Everyone says making a technical mistake is not an option. If I was starting as a photographer in 2025 or 2026, I make more of these mistakes on purpose. Stay till the end, I'll show you the mistakes that actually improve your photos. Alright guys, mistake number 1. I photographed everything at f8 or higher. When I first started out, I thought I was really good at focusing. All the photographs I took were sharp. The subject was sharp, the background was sharp, the foreground was sharp, the grass behind it was sharp, everything in my frame was tack sharp. What I didn't realize was the lens was doing the heavy lifting. At f8 and f11 and higher, the depth of field is so deep that every single thing in the frame falls into focus. So I wasn't really mastering focusing, I was hiding behind it. That narrow aperture made me believe that I was good, but I wasn't. If I was starting photography in 2025 or 2026, this would be the mistake that I would make again and again on purpose. I would shoot with a wide open lens, f2.8, f1.4, f1.8, or whatever your lens allows. Because when you open your aperture wide, there's very little room for error. Every millimeter counts. You start missing focus and you get frustrated. But every frustration sharpens your reflexes, your precision, your control. And here is the hidden gift. When you shoot wide open, you also learn how to guide your viewer's eye. You learn how blur becomes storytelling. Your depth isolates emotions, and how softness could sometimes say more than sharpness ever could. In a moment, I'll tell you the second mistake I would make, because that's the one that teaches you how to see light instead of exposing for it. Mistake number 2. I listened to my camera's meter. In my early days, I thought my camera knew everything. Every time the live meter hit 0, I pressed the shutter button. It made me feel safe, like I was doing it right. But what I didn't realize was that I was training my brain to obey a machine. What I wasn't doing was training my brain to see light. If I was starting photography in 2025 or 2026, this would be the second mistake I would make on purpose. I listened to my meter, but I would write everything down. Every exposure, every f-stop, every shutter speed for every photo I took. Then I would open those photos on my computer and ask myself one question. If I was following the gray chart, what would I change to get better exposure? I would keep doing this until one day I wouldn't need my camera's meter to tell me where my subject lies on the grayscale, meaning taking me to 0. That's when I would stop recording light and start knowing how I want my entire frame and my subject to feel and look. Next, I'll share the third mistake, because that's the one that's going to change completely how I think about composition forever. Mistake number 3. I followed every single composition rule there was. When I first picked up the camera, I believed the secret to great photographs was in the composition rules. I studied every composition rule out there. Rule of thirds, leading lines, balance, symmetry. I memorized them like formulas. And for a while, my images looked good, but my images didn't have any feelings. They looked right, but felt totally empty. And that's when I realized something. Composition isn't about rules, it's about guidance. It's about speaking to your audience. If I was starting photography in 2025 or 2026, this would be the third mistake I would make on purpose. Follow every composition rule for thousands and thousands of photographs. until I started feeling trapped and boxed in, and taking photos felt painful. It felt mechanical and not creative. Because the moment you start feeling limited, that's when you begin to start seeing differently. You'll start noticing when the story needs space, when imbalance creates tension, and when breaking the frame tells a deeper story. The reality is, the composition rules teaches you control, but breaking them teaches you how to speak in your own voice. And once you start composing from emotions instead of geometry, you no longer arrange shapes, you arrange feelings. Next, I would share the fourth mistake I would love to make, because it's the one that would change how I deal with rejection forever. Mistake number 4, I hid my work. When I was young, I was terrified to show my work. I took thousands of photographs, but no one ever saw them. Why? Because deep down I didn't want to face rejection. I thought if I kept my images to myself, no one could tell me I wasn't good enough. But here is the truth. Every artist grows through pain and not praise. If I was starting photography in 2025 or 2026, this would be the fourth mistake I would make. Show my work before I thought it was ready. Post it, print it, hang it, let people react. Because the moment you start getting feedback, good or bad, you start to look at your work differently. You start understanding what story you want to tell and what your audience is actually understanding. Criticism is not the enemy. Silence is. Rejection doesn't break you, it builds you. It teaches you humility, resilience, and direction. And the beautiful thing is, once you stop fearing judgment, you start creating for yourself. And that creation makes you happy, which gives you the courage to fail even more, which actually means create more. In a moment, I'll share the fifth mistake I would make if I was starting as a photographer in 2025 or 2026, because it's the one that will transform patience into power. When I was starting out, I thought a photographer meant never missing a shot. Every time I saw movement, I pressed the shutter button. Every interesting frame, click, click, click. And I ended up with thousands of photographs, but I captured very few moments. Moments that matter, moments that had emotions. If I could start photography all over again in 2025 or 2026, knowing what I know now, this would be the mistake that I would make on purpose. I would miss shots intentionally. I would lower the camera and just watch. Because when you stop photographing everything, you start seeing everything. I begin to notice the rhythm, the small hesitations before a gesture, the way light changes right before emotion happens. You realize that patience isn't stillness, it's awareness. And the real photograph isn't taken by your camera, it's taken by your attention. When you finally press the shutter, you should know why you're doing it, not just because. That's when your images start speaking in silence. The real secret behind every mistake, every one of these mistakes taught me something that no tutorial could. Shooting wide open taught me how to focus. Not just with the lens, but with intention. Listening to my meter taught me discipline and how to see light for myself. Following every composition rule taught me freedom and how to follow my own voice. Showing my work taught me courage to grow through rejection. And missing shots taught me patience to connect before I capture. If I was starting as a photographer in 2025 or 2026, I wouldn't avoid these mistakes. In fact, I would make more of them. Because mistakes don't define your failure, they define your growth. And that's what separates photographers who take pictures from the ones who create images that live forever. If you guys want to learn more about technicalities of photography, go watch this playlist. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.